We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to the April 23rd edition. It's me pounding my chest. The April 23rd edition of the Monday Mashup. I'm currently out of coffee, but I've had 3 cups already, so I should be just fine over the course of the next 58 minutes. How is everybody today? Welcome to another day on planet Earth, wherever you are, or if you're listening to this in the podcast, welcome to the moment that you're currently experiencing my voice reaching the vibratory receptacles of your ears. Here in California, where I'm currently speaking to you from, it is cold as hell, and it is quite a sea change from how the weather started last week. On Thursday, we had a very nice warming trend. It actually started on Wednesday. Wednesday was a particularly nice day. Almost a picture-perfect day, without chemtrails, without those fuzzy white worms crawling across the scrape of the sky. They were gone on Wednesday. They were gone on Thursday. They were gone on Friday. Even on Saturday, nary a chemtrail in the air. And it was great. It was a great 4-day stretch. And Saturday was just absolutely spectacular. The weather for the new moon was off the charts. It was radiant. It was warm. It was welcoming. And spirits were high on Friday and Saturday. It was great. And my kid played a baseball game at a Little League field. It was pure Americana. It could not get much better that day. Friday and Saturday might have been perfect days. On Saturday, I drove down the freeway with the top down in my car. And it was spectacular. Friday and Saturday, top-down weather, spectacular. Because I have a convertible. That's right, I have a convertible. So I was cruising down the street, down the freeway of love, in a convertible smart car. Not a Cadillac, but a smart car. It was great. It was great. And then on Sunday, yesterday, woke up and went out for a nice walk, and I walked down to the edge of the bay where I live, and I could see mountains of clouds forming around the Golden Gate, which meant that the inversion effect was kicking in. And the inversion effect, for those of you who are not familiar with weather in the Bay Area, takes place when there's a pocket of really hot air in the Central Valley. It forms a vacuum and draws in the cold and damp and moist air from the coast. And while this type of weather is just absolutely spectacular for wine growers in creating the type of conditions we're where grapes really thrive, it kind of sucks for the rest of us every now and then. Now, I'm not going to complain too much because at least I'm walking on 2 feet, and I'm walking around and I'm upright, so I can experience the drastic change in hopefully a poetic fashion. But I got to tell you, those 3 days were great, particularly because we were bombarded with rain prior to that, and now it is butt-ass cold, and not digging it. So I had an interesting weekend. I'll tell you about my weekend, and because I know you all really care about my weekend. And then I will ramp up to the meat of the show, and we're going to be focusing on food today. Today's topic will be food and the type of food that you theoretically need to avoid. More than theoretically, emphatically, you need to avoid this certain type of food. Because if you don't, your health is at great risk. So I'm going to get to that. That's the tease. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that very, very important, specific topic a little bit later. Not too much later, but a little bit later. For now, however, you're going to hear about my weekend because I think that sometimes what I'm able to do or experience might actually impact people in some ways. Say, hey, that's my life is kind of like that too. I can resonate with that. In fact, it does happen. People have told me that. So I guess sharing my story is actually helpful. First of all, I had this weekend, I did a ton of readings. The readings have really gone through the roof. If it was a graph, it would be up and to the right. And I'm happy to do readings. It's what I'm here to do. And this weekend, I think I did 5, and 3 yesterday and 2 on Saturday. And I tell you, doing readings I love it. It can be taxing though, for sure. I think 3 to 4 is maybe my max in a day. I'm not sure if I can do more than 4. I think 4 is about it because the process itself is pretty intense for me. It's not that I go into any kind of weird epileptic state or anything like that. I don't have that as an experience, but what I tap into when I do these things is it's kind of intense and it takes a lot. So when I'm done, I'm kind of taxed, and so I had a great weekend doing readings. It was fantastic. And I appreciate doing these things for people. Gives me a sense of purpose, and I think other people get to experience something of value as well. And we're all co-creating in this really interesting upward spiral. At least that's my experience of it. The other thing that I did, apart from the esoteric, this is kind of my life, really in a nutshell. On this hand, I am working with people at what I would call soul-to-soul level and doing this very abstract thing and sending these readings out via the internet. That's on one hand, completely abstract. When people ask me, what do you do? So, okay, well, here's what I do. Oh, interesting. On the other hand, I do all this other mundane stuff, like I'm a dad who is got a kid in Little League. Okay, that's what I do. So the kid in Little League thing is really interesting, and I'm going to talk about that for a second because my son was on one team originally. He was put on a team, and I went to the first practice of that team. And it was fun, it was lively, and the manager was organized, and he kept the kids moving from station to station. I'm thinking, hey, this could be a really fun experience. I'm digging this. I wasn't sure, what it would be like for him or for me, because I played Little League, and I had good coaches and I had shitty coaches. I thought, this is a good guy. The problem is that the practices were on Monday night. And because I decided to take another job so I could make ends meet, so I could continue to do the blog and do all the things that I do without being kicked out of my house or without having my power shut off. I was now doing something on Monday nights, and now my kid could not attend this practice. So now what? It was early in the season. I put into a petition to the league, and they put him on another team that was practicing on Wednesdays. Great. The problem is that the guy who's coaching this team on Wednesdays is kind of a dick. I have to say this. I have to get it off my chest, and I'm trying to be human about this, right? I'm trying to be human about this. But what I'm seeing with him is, well, here's the first clue. First practice, new team. My son shows up. The guy doesn't even ask what his name is. Does not even ask what his name is. He went the entire practice without even walking up to my kid. And I watched him. Trust me, I watched him. He didn't even walk up to me and say, "Hi, I'm Dave." I can't say his name. "Hi, I'm so and so, and you must be, so and so's father." "Yeah, I am." "Well, nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too." None of that happened. So that's a big clue. Why would he do that? He was so self-involved that he couldn't even take 2 minutes to ask my kid who he was. Fascinating. Anyway, I just filed it away. I said, maybe he was busy, maybe he was distracted. The old hold the space thing for the other person. Hey, let's hold the space because maybe this guy's got a lot going on. So I held the space. I decided to try to help. And then, we played our first game, and I watched the kids, and the kids are not really that good. I'm sorry. There's some okay kids on the team. They're not that good. They're young. They need practice. We got hit with a bunch of rain. The rains rained out the practices. But then what was really fascinating is that the coach would show up late to the practices. He'd get there late. And by that time, the kids are doing cartwheels, and it's hard to handle them at that point. And so in the last practice, he didn't even bring the balls. No balls. And I thought to myself, well, this is symbolic, isn't it? No balls. Anyway, I didn't want to point this out to him. It was not my job to point out the symbolic nature of him not bringing his balls to practice. So anyway, I must be hell for some of these people sometimes. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I just must be a pain in the ass because I don't always interact with reality at the same level that other people do. I'm not putting myself apart. I'm not saying myself. It's just who I am. It's just how how I've evolved. So anyway, I said, hey, if it's hard for you to get here on time, give me the balls. Again, symbolic. Did I really have to ask for the balls? Maybe I just bring my own balls, which I'm going to do. I'm going to bring my own balls to practice from here on out. So he's like, no, we don't want the kids to throw because if their technique is wrong, they may hurt their arms. They're 8 years old. Okay, these kids they're pretty resilient. But apparently he's got his own program, his own agenda. That's fine. So it's like, okay, fine, whatever, dude. Just thought I'd help you out. But show up on fucking time and you have your practice ready to go. Then maybe I'll take a deep breath with this. So the first few games I was I was actually coaching. I was like the first base coach. I helped out in the dugout, and then all of a sudden I got removed from that. And I got removed from that yesterday because as we're leaving, he says, "Our next game, these are the only people that are allowed in the dugout," and my name wasn't part of that list. So what happened is I actually bonded with a team mother. And she noticed the same thing that I did. And so now she's actually written an email to the league to basically say, hey, look, this guy is not really running practice the way it could be run. Which means, by the way, the kids can't field a stinking ground ball. I can't tell you how many times I've seen ground balls come to them, and it's like an oncoming train is in their path. They just don't know what to do. And do you think that he ever, once has drills where they're taking ground balls? Nope. No, no, and no. So this woman, this mother, has decided to email the board. She already did, and I've totally got her back on this thing. So now I've been banned from the dugout by this incredibly self-involved and self-important coach, which pisses me off. I'm sorry. I know it's mice nuts. I mean, the fucking world could be ending. Here I am bitching about a fucking coach. Sorry. I just have to get it off my chest. And I have a pulpit. I pay $40 a month to Blog Talk Radio to do this every now and then. And I promise I'll move on. But what's the lesson here? You know, what's the lesson? You know, is the lesson is stuff like this in our life mice nuts? Really, is it mice nuts, or do we have something to learn from this? Or these, you know, really kind of, you know, mundane situations, and we all have them. We all have them. It could be somebody you work with. It could be somebody who goes to your blog. It could be somebody on Facebook. You know, what do we have to learn from these moments where we butt up against something that we know kind of inherently is they're either wrong or they're slacking or there's, you know, some weird agenda on their part? I mean, what do we do about that? I mean, are these people just reflections of ourselves? Because that was my esoteric training at one point, right? That there is no us. You know, there's this famous quote by Gurdjieff, which is, you know, how many people? Gurdjieff would ask people, you know, gathered together at his little, you know, toast, you know, the toast of the fools. He would ask them, how many people are in the world? And people would come up with their best guess, and they would all be inherently wrong because they were basing it on population. And Gurdjieff would say, no, there's 9 people. There's really 9 people in the world. And everybody would sit there, they'd scratch their noses and go, what do you mean by that? You know? And what Gurdjieff was referring to was the characters and the aspects of the Enneagram. And that there were 9 types, and everything else was just a reflection. Okay, that's Gurdjieff's position. There are other esoteric positions. How many people in the world? There's no people in the world. Theoretically, there at kind of an esoteric quantum level, there is nobody in the world. Maybe you're not even in the world. You know, maybe your perception of the world is really just an illusion, theoretically, and that nobody exists, and that the only thing that exists is our perception and our attention to what exists. That is one commonly held view. Another commonly held view is there is only one person in the world, and that's you, and then everything else is a projection or a reflection. So if that's the case, right, then everybody kind of gets a free pass, and nobody gets a free pass because they're all extensions of ourselves. So if you want to change somebody, theoretically you don't change them, you just change something about you, and then theoretically they're changed, or the situation is changed. So maybe when we have these moments that there is an opportunity to learn, but then we get into this kind of solipsistic relationship with the universe, and that we are the only ones that exist. Meanwhile, there's a whole band of perpetrators out in the world that are, you know, completely and utterly destroying the environment and acting as psychopathic terrorists at almost every position and level of power, from government to finance to media. So in that case, are they an aspect of who we are as well? And if that's the case, well, what does that say about us? You know, never into the dual and non-dual aspect of reality. You know, is it important for us to name the perps? If we're naming the perps, are we going to name ourselves as a result? Because we none of us are perfect. We're just not. We do as best we can, but we're not. So we'll exhibit petty behavior. We'll exhibit, you know, sloth, indifference. I mean, all these things that compile the worst traits of being human, and it happens. But on the other hand, we have to strive towards something, because if we don't, we just may as well put all get 38s and stick them in our mouths and just, you know, end it all right now. One giant Jonestown. So, what do we do? So we dance with these situations. We dance with the aspect that this guy who walks around with his nose in the air might actually be me. He might actually be me. Or he may not be me. So it's like, what part of him is me? Okay, maybe I'll claim that. Maybe it's my spiritual arrogance. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what he represents to me. My spiritual arrogance. Okay, done. Change the situation. Or maybe there's something else going on. Because one of the things that I've noticed with him is that he's got no energy. None. Zero. And I have a friend who's a very good friend. He came and watched the game on Saturday. This is a guy who is a consultant. He is a top-level consultant, and he's got eagle-eye vision, this guy. I mean, he's my consigliere, like the one guy that I actually really trust and can help me sharpen my saw. He went to the game, and he saw exactly what I saw. The guy walked onto the field, didn't say hello to anybody, didn't say hello to a soul. Walked out, did these kind of abstract drills, and brought the kids back. Nothing. Nothing. No energy. And I'm not like that. I interact with the kids. I high-five them. I like kids. I think they're fun. They're gifts. They're jewels. They can be a pain in the ass, but these are special little beings in their own way. And they remind us of things that we're not aware of. We lose touch with. Wonder, curiosity, mischievousness, imagination, spontaneity. These are what kids have to teach us and keep us in touch with. And it's our sacred right to have them hold on to these things in ways that allow them to continue to interact with the universe in a novel, creative, and complex way. And to retain some level of sovereignty and the ability to question reality without being existentially bogged down. Knowing who they are. We're here to help them do that. So I enjoy it. I enjoy hanging out with kids. I love it. I used to work with kids. I used to work with autistic kids. So much I loved it. And so, I guess my energy was too much. He wanted me off the field. So now I threatened him. So what do I do with that? How do I deal with that? I threaten people. Because I've threatened people in the past. Well, screw that. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. This is what we do as humans. We understand, we have an innate understanding of who we are, and we can put it out in the world, and guess what? The world doesn't always dig it. Boo fucking who. And people are threatened. Oh, you're too much. Oh, dial it back. And so what happens to us? Well, then we say, oh, gee, I was just rejected. I was just shut down. I've got to change in order to be accepted. Screw that. If there's anything you get out of this show today, the admonition is be yourself and be yourself unabashedly, unequivocally yourself, whatever that is. Now, you can adjust your sails. You can step back and say, hey, I needed to learn something from that. Integrate it and move on. Don't get stuck. Don't get bogged down. I gave myself a couple hours worth of depression last night because, this thing was not going well, and this guy's a jerk, okay? And it's my kid's first Little League experience, and I wanted it to be fun. I wanted him to learn something. I didn't want to have to go and get into a power struggle with the coach, who's a turd, okay? But now I've got to learn something around it. It's my thing. I've got to be cool. I've got to have a Tao thing. But at the same time, I'm not going to lay down. I'm not going to lay down. And that's just the way it is. So if there's anything you get out of the show today, don't shut down because other people are threatened by you, okay? Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's never worth it. It's a losing end game. Because what happens is that all of a sudden, you're a shadow of your former self. And this is what happens to enculturation. This is what happens to people going through consensual reality. Shut it down. You're too much. Turn it off. Blah, 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 blah. Conform. Go live in a box. Go die in a box. So there we go. Speaking of boxes, how many of you have been to Trader Joe's and seen on the end cap these wonderful pieces of toasted seaweed? This is the radiation or the food part of our show that we're now transitioning into. How many of you have been to Trader Joe's and seen this? They've got these toast. It is their most popular item. Really, theoretically, they put those little squares of toasted nori out on the end caps at every Trader Joe's. These things are a big deal. They're snack food, and they're peddling this as snack food to kids. 99 cents, it's very affordable. Hey, it's only 99 cents for this stuff. Why not? Well, you may want to rethink purchasing that after I read you this fairly long report. But I have 30 minutes left, so why not? Before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to copy the link. And if you are in the chat room, I'm now going to give you this link. Here we go. And there's the link. So here we go. This is from the enviroreporter.com. And it's lengthy, and I'll do my best to read it clearly and keep your attention while I'm doing it. It says here, on April 13, 2012, enviroreporter.com tested nori seaweed from Japan bought in a West Los Angeles store. West LA, by the way, is kind of Tony. The same one where this reporter bought the identical item 8 months ago, soon after the Fukushima Daiichi meltdowns began in Japan. The trendy and organic delicacy popular with LA hipsters was 94.7 above normal. 17.6% of that additional ionization indicative of alpha radiation, which can be 60 to 1,000 times more dangerous than beta and gamma radiation. These tests were performed with an Inspector Alert nuclear radiation monitor, the same detector EnviroReporter.com has used in over 1,500 tests for Fukushima radiation beginning 4 days after the March 11, 2011 triple meltdowns at the destroyed Fukushima Daiichi 6 reactor complex in Japan. Nori seaweed is considered a delicacy consumed upon eating sushi wrapped in it or straight out of the bag in thin green squares like the product purchased by EnviroReporter.com. This kind of seaweed can be purchased at nearly 50 Japanese and Japanese-American stores in Southern California, as well as in about 900 Japanese restaurants and sushi bars throughout the Southland. It is ubiquitous in the diets of millions around the world, equally at home wrapped around rice and fish sushi, as it is prized in upscale Asian cuisine restaurants for its crisp, papery texture and its flavor, which evokes the sea and the earth. According to a frothy 2008 New York Times article, the unabating sushi boom has driven up nori consumption in the United States. A retest of the same brand of seaweed bought from the same Japanese market last August was equally disconcerting. The initial August 23, 2011 seaweed test showed only slightly reduced ionization, indicating the presence of medium to long-lived radionuclides, possibly including cancer-causing cesium-137. Also, still showing the presence of alpha, the earlier sample still was 44.2% over previous background while still in the bag, which shields alpha radiation from detection by an Inspector Alert. So the bag itself, shielding the radiation, was not enough to keep it from being 44.2% over. Imagine what would happen if the bag was removed. Last year, the seaweed was 54.2% higher than background, therefore experienced a 10% decrease in ionization over nearly 8 months. That translates to a 15.4% decrease of the radionuclides per year while in the bag. So I guess if you have this stuff, hold on to the bag for about 5 years, and you'll be able to eat it. You'll be able to eat the sushi in about 5 years. Removed from the bag, the older seaweed was 55% higher than the previous background, with a 10.8% of background exceedance being alpha radiation. Last year, the same seaweed tested out of the bag 67.2% above the background mean, meaning that it had decreased 12.2% in ionization for the period, or an 18.8% decrease, including the alpha. So yeah, about 5 years. Hold on to your sushi nori seaweed for about 5 years, and you'll be able to eat it. So not only is the new Japanese nori seaweed sample hotter than last year, the older seaweed is still heavily ionizing as well. Both exhibit strong alpha presence, and both have been and are being sold to an unsuspecting public in ethnic and trendy Los Angeles neighborhoods alike. Last year, Enviro Reporter tested other Japanese food products that also showed significant radiation above normal, including beer, sake, vegetable juice, sweet rolls, and 3 different types of tea, including green tea, that came in 65.1% over normal. The Japanese and American governments are either not testing this food product for Fukushima radiation, or one or both of these bureaucracies have deemed this amount of radiation to be acceptable. Indeed, the Japanese have a system that could allow for the exportation of fish and food products that they determine too radioactive to eat in the United States, which has standards up to dozens of times more lax when addressing the specific radionuclides spewing out of the uncontained triple meltdowns. These weaker radiation standards are not some arcane bureaucratic detail. More radiation means more cancers and death. The most august scientific body in the nation has confirmed this beyond scientific doubt. In late July 2005, the prestigious National Academy of Sciences came out with a milestone report that confirmed this. The scientific research base shows that there is no threshold of exposure below which low levels of ionized radiation can be demonstrated to be harmless or beneficial, said Richard R. Monson, the panel chairman and professor of epidemiology at Harvard's School of Public Health. Yet the government agency that is supposed to regulate what's in our food has been using standards and procedures created back in the early 1960s, not having formalized updated techniques in the 1990s, according to the FDA's website. FDA radiation standards aren't even mandatory. They exist in the ether of being recommendations that are not enforceable. FDA's guidance documents, including this guidance, do not establish legally enforceable responsibilities, reads the agency's radiation compliance manual. Instead, guidances describe the agency's current thinking on a topic and should be viewed only as recommendations unless specific regulatory or statutory requirements are cited. The use of the word should in agency guidances means that something is suggested or recommended, but not required. Japanese standards for strontium-90 and iodine-131, 2 of the most dangerous radionuclides associated with the Fukushima meltdowns, are 3 times more strict than their American equivalents. FDA limits for one of the most prevalent and fearsome radionuclides, cesium-134 and cesium-137, have a combined limit that is 24 times the Japanese limit for this deadly bone and blood-seeking radionuclide in baby food and milk. The American red line for CS-134 and CS-137 combined for general food is 12 times more lax than the Japanese ones. So it goes on to say here that high radiation in Japanese seaweed was of concern since Greenpeace announced in May 2011 that it had been collecting seaweed off of Fukushima and found it loaded with radionuclides. 10 out of 12 seaweed samples exceeded 10,000 becquerels per kilogram, though it wasn't clear if the radionuclides were cesium-137 and or iodine-131, which have Japanese contamination limits of 2,000 becquerels per kilogram and 500 becquerels per kilogram, respectively. The environmental group was drawing attention to how hot the seaweed was, a message clearly not heard by the Japanese government. From May 20th, fishermen along the coast will begin harvesting seaweed for public consumption, said Ike Tulang, a radiation expert with Greenpeace. In a statement, our research indicates a significant risk that this seaweed will be highly contaminated. Nearly a year later, in early March 2012, a fishing village named Utatsu in the Miyagi Prefecture resumed seaweed farming around 60 miles north of Fukushima Daiichi. That directly down-current from the northern flowing current from where millions of tons of seawater have been hosed on the melted reactor's molten masses of chlorium. So the moral of the story, boys and girls, is that seaweed is ridiculously contaminated with radiation. That's not to mention the other products which were spoken of in this piece. So if you enjoy Japanese cuisine, from green tea to toasted seaweed to other Japanese delicacies like rice, Japanese rice, or fish, or things like tofu, you're going to have to rethink all this stuff. You're going to have to rethink how you consume Japanese products. I'm sorry, it's the way it goes. And unfortunately, here on the west coast of the United States, we're going to start, it's already started in the Pacific Northwest. Radiation isotopes are showing up in Pacific Northwest salmon. So we're getting this stuff in a very big way here in this country already. And if I were you, and I do, I don't consume Japanese products. If you want green tea, you can get green tea from places like Korea. You can get green tea from Taiwan. And if you look at the green tea in that area, it's actually on the other side. Those countries are on the other side of Japan. So you want green tea, Chinese green tea, probably not too bad. I mean, it's, we're talking about the loop current, and China's on the other side of that. So if you are a green tea lover, Chinese green tea may be the way for you to go. I'm not sure if the Chinese produce their own seaweed or kelp. They might, but I would probably stay away from it because the China Sea is toxic anyway. I mean, that's where China dumps all of their wonderful chemicals. And China has very loose environmental standards. They really don't give a shit about human life for the most part. I guess if you wanted to find, there's a purveyor of kelp and seaweed that's on the East Coast. It's Atlantic kelp and Atlantic seaweed. I believe they're out of either Massachusetts or Maine. You can probably get get stuff from them, and it might be helpful. What's really fascinating around this whole thing is if you look at the one thing that can help us deal with radiation and cesium and iodine, especially the iodine is poisoning, is kelp. It's kelp. So theoretically, the stuff that we would go to save us from the poisoning is poison. Think about that for a moment. How insidious is that? So I'm not sure what the answer is here. Cilantro is probably not. Cilantro, I keep coming back to cilantro. It's only a matter of time before cilantro is banned. Trust me on this. They're going to come up with some weird thing that cilantro has concocted. And they're going to start banning cilantro. Because number one, cilantro does not absorb radioactivity. They've done tests on plants. They've done tests on broccoli, spinach. They've done them here in this area. The cilantro is one of these plants, and all the other plants absorbed. They had traces of cesium and iodine, but cilantro didn't. Cilantro does not absorb this stuff unless it's in your body, and then it absorbs it and takes it right out. So cilantro is really, your friend. And sometimes Gate 7 hangs out in the chat room. If she's there today, I would love for her to post her cilantro recipe, her cilantro pesto recipe that she sent to me. It's a great recipe, and you can use this stuff on anything. It's like a spread. So cilantro's your friend for now until it's banned. I'm in a cynical mood today. But there you go. There's the skinny on Japanese food and irradiated Japanese food. Reactor 4 is still quite active, by the way. And if Reactor 4 really goes heavily into meltdown mode, we're screwed. The amazing thing about Chernobyl is that Chernobyl blew, and they literally entombed Chernobyl in about, 2 weeks? A year later, more than a year later, 14 months later, the reactors in Fukushima are still out of control. TEPCO says they don't have enough money to deal with Reactor 4. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And so I think about this stuff, and then I think about this coach who's a dipshit. And does it really matter? Does it really matter if he's a dipshit and he's snubbing me? Does it really matter? I'm sure there's much bigger things in the world, much bigger fish to fry, much bigger bodies to fry than that. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to go in the chat room, hang out in the chat room, I'm going to play some music. And when I come back, we'll talk about the second part of the show and get into the stretch run for the Monday edition of the Monday Mashup. What do I want to hear? Let's go with, let's go with Testing 1, 2, 3. I love this guitar. Michael Lee Hill just shreds the guitar on this track. Testing 1, 2, 3, Michael Lee Hill. I'll be back in 3 minutes and 6 seconds. You're listening to the Monday Mashup. I'm Robert Phoenix. Michael Lee Hill, tearing it up on the guitar. He was a really interesting guest. I should have him back on the show one of these days and see what's happening with his UFO contact out there in Ohio, Lake Erie, the Lake Erie UFO connection. He was an interesting cat. Speaking of interesting cats and UFOs, I think I'm going to have Michael Tellinger on in about a week or so, and we're going to talk about his new. Michael Tellinger is an interesting guy. Of course, he's gotten into this whole theory about ancient aliens or ancient civilizations in South Africa, with the South African mound and the South African pyramid, and he's also doing some work around remodeling the economy. He's got some major lawsuit action going against bankers and economic revelation. Now, I'm going to have him on the show, and we're going to talk about this because I'm very interested in what he's doing and want to support it. It's also quite dangerous when you go into that area and want to take these guys on. So, assuming that everything is on the up and up, Michael Tellinger is entering into pretty dangerous territory. It's one thing to talk about pyramids in South Africa and ancient civilizations. It's another to take on the power elite with their most egregious and manipulative tool, which is money lending. So I'm going to have Michael on, and we're going to talk about that hopefully in the next week or so. I will not be on the air Wednesday, unfortunately, but I will be back next Wednesday. So it's not a permanent thing. It's only a temporary thing, I promise. But I will be on Friday. We'll do the 2-hour show on Friday. And maybe what I'll do is, because navigating the astrological matrix is so popular and people love the show so much, I might just roll that out on Friday instead of the Far Friday or the Friday Farcast, and see how that goes on a Friday. But I will be back the following Wednesday. It's just that this Wednesday I got to do something else. So that's just the way that goes. Let's see, is there anything else in the news that's really important that you just have to know about before I send you back out there into the day? Let me just see here. I'll tell you one of the things that I did experience this weekend. Yesterday, I walked around the neighborhood, and I got to tell you, nature is such an amazing thing. It's just incredibly amazing. I saw these 2 squirrels just go mano a mano for a good 5 minutes on this cypress tree, and it was an amazing thing to watch. These squirrels were literally doing this duel on this. It was like a John Woo film, except it was squirrels, and it was just relentless. And there was this one part of the squirrel duel where one squirrel was on one side of the cypress tree and the other squirrel was on the other side, and they couldn't see each other. And it was like, who was going to blink first, and who was going to show their little squirrel head to divulge, where they were in that tree. It was fascinating. And nature was happening yesterday. There was a lot of bee activity here in the Bay Area right now, more so than I've seen in quite some time. And it was really encouraging. I literally walked through a couple of swarms in a good way, and I was really emboldened and encouraged to see the bees out and about, and not these big fat bumblebees, and not yellow jackets, but real bees, doing real bee work on a lot of the flowers here, because there's a lot of wildflowers where I live. Great to see that. Nature was really out in force yesterday. And I think one of the things that we can take solace in some ways, is that nature is far more resilient than we give it credit for. And that's not to say that we can just dump on nature and hope that it just comes back. I just think that it's a lot more resilient than we give it credit for. And I think the ability for nature to be able to retain its core, its center, is far greater than we understand. And even human nature, to some extent, shares that. We have the ability to be resilient as well. Now, there are points where we get inundated, and there are tipping points in our own consciousness, toxic tipping points, where we go over the edge. And it happens. It happens on an individual level. It happens at a collective level. But I think we are far more resilient and stronger than we give ourselves credit for. How many times have you in your life, or somebody else that you know in your life, have bounced back from really challenging circumstances and were able to live and thrive and to go beyond, what's happened to them in their lives? Now, sometimes this doesn't happen. Sometimes challenging circumstances bury people. This happens. But more often than not, we are far stronger and far more resilient than we understand or know. And before I sign off today, I want to be able to acknowledge that, because I know that there are people in the chat room and there are people listening to the show that have challenges in their lives. And they're all unique individual challenges. And guess what? You can overcome those challenges. You can. You can do it. It does. It happens. And there's really key aspects or key activities or key actions or key thoughts that you can engage to change conditions in your life. You're capable of it. And for each of us, those things are different. Only you understand what you know and what you need to experience and what you need to change in order to activate much more positive conditions, much more abundant conditions, and much more holistic and integrated conditions. Because that's our nature. That's where we're headed. That's why these times are so challenging for us, because never before in human history have we been bombarded with so much coming at us in so many different directions. The stakes are high. They're really high. And the stakes are conscious realization of who we are, what's been done to us, how we move through it, and what we want to do once we get there. That's it. And it's all happening in your life on an individual level, and it's happening on a collective level. That's why the game has become so chaotic, so bizarre, so strange. That's why we're being inundated with all this, very cliquish, cultish, illuminist symbolism, going all the way back to Babylon, all used to entrain you to continue to act and react and participate in the thought matrix in the same way that you've always participated in it, which is fearful, anxious, depressed, and off balance. So you can change all that, but only you know what you need to do. I don't know what you need to do. Maybe I do. If I look at your chart, I can help you, or somebody else can help you. There's a lot of other people out there in the world that can do what I do or do it in their own way. I don't have a patent on it, but ultimately it comes down to you. And I think if we're all really honest with ourselves, we understand what those things are. If we're not bullshitting ourselves, if we're not fooling ourselves, we know exactly what we need to do. And it's apart from any kind of ideology, it's apart from any kind of philosophy. All that stuff is nice, and it can bring a nice shine or can help you to some extent. At the end of the day, it comes down to you, or me in this case, and how we're going to deal with the circumstances of our lives. And sometimes it's about hard work, sometimes it's about surrender, sometimes it's about accepting something, sometimes it's about letting go, sometimes it's about fighting, sometimes we have to use our will. We were given wills for a purpose, and there's a time to engage the will. There's a time to disengage, to let some other agency that might be a quote-unquote higher agency to work through us. Surrender is a valid option and strategy at times. Activating your will is a very valid strategy at times. Let's say, for instance, you're going through some form of detox, or you're detaching yourself from a negative habit. Let's say it's drinking. Let's say it's drugs. Let's say it's food. Let's say it's shitty people. Well, your will is really important. It's a really important thing. You got to use that will. You've got to activate it. Cut it off at the pass. You know, part of our challenge in this life is that we've lost touch with our wills. We have. So we got a bunch of people running around not knowing how to activate their will. And there's an art to that. There's an art to the activation of will. If you can't, then what are you? You're spineless. You're willless, and anything can work upon you. And there's a time to let go of the will, where you have to step back and and bring it in. This is all part of the dance. And here we are on Monday. Where are you? Where are you with your will? Where are you with surrender? Where are you with letting go? How graceful can you be with it? In martial arts, they practice forms in martial arts, Tai Chi, whatever. You name the martial art, they practice forms. And in the forms, there are parts where it is dynamic, and there are parts where it is receptive. And that's the way these forms work. So here we are, 4/23, 2012. And the question for you today, as I transition to the next phase of my day, is where is your will? How comfortable are you with your own will? And what does will mean to you? That's it. Take that out into the day, explore your will, see how it works, flex it, play with it, question it, interact with it. That's it. All right. Thank you for joining me today for 60 minutes of rant, rave, and thanks to Michael V. Hill, rock and roll. I'm Robert Phoenix. I will be back on Friday, and keep your eyes for the upcoming interview with Michael Tellinger. It should be great. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I love you all, even though I have not met most of you in the flesh, in the spirit. We're all one. Take good care. I am out of here. Adios.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed, and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.